What's going on, y'all? Welcome to your short video tutorial series on time signatures and counting measures. Now listen, before you can make a beat, before you can produce anything, before you can even write music, this is the foundation for everything. You have to understand how time signatures work, and you need to know how to count measures. So let's go ahead and get started. We're gonna start with time signatures. Let's go over the logic. Alright guys, so here is the definition for time signatures. Time signatures indicate how many beats are in each measure of a piece of music, as well as which note value is counted as a beat. Okay, now I know that's a lot of information, but I promise you it's all gonna make sense. We're gonna connect the dots, okay? If we go up here in Logic, in your session, let's all go there together where the time signature is. You see you got 4/4. Click on that. Okay, so now you'll see that there are multiple options for time signatures. Now, time signatures have two numbers. They're called a top number and a bottom number. Okay, in this case, the top number is going to be how many beats are in one measure. Okay, how many beats are in one measure. So in 4/4, it's going to be 4 beats to a measure. And then the bottom number is going to be the note value. We're going to get into note values here in a little bit, but first let's talk about the top number. Okay, so here we have measure number 1, right? Right here where my mouse is, this is measure number 1. I have it highlighted in a loop cycle, and it goes all the way to the end of measure 1. Now, if you're looking at the grid, right? You'll notice that right where number 1 is, there's a line. This line is here for a reason. This line indicates the start of measure number 1, and it also indicates the beat 1 or the downbeat. So you're gonna need to know this. The very first beat in a measure is called the downbeat. And we're gonna look at that a little bit more in the next tutorial. But this is the downbeat. So this is beat number 1. See it? Number 1. Here's beat number 2. This is beat number 3. And this is beat number 4. Okay, so that's the visual representation. In any DAW, it's gonna be in the grid. Okay, so again, measure 1. This is measure 1 right here. This first line is beat 1, the downbeat. Second line is beat 2. Third is beat 3, and fourth is beat 4, and then the next measure starts. Then measure 2 starts. Now look at measure 2, same thing. 1, 2, 3, 4. And that's measure 2, and then it will go measure 3, measure 4, measure 5, and so on, okay? So if we go up, let's see if we can make this make a little more sense. If we go back up to time signatures, right? And we went to a 3/4. Right? We're gonna click on 3/4. You should be following along and doing this as well. You're gonna get this right here. Don't worry about this because we're just doing some practicing and learning here, right? So change project signature, just hit change project signature. It's fine. Now look, notice that now my cycle bar has changed because things in the time signature have changed and in the count, right? So if we go, I'm gonna highlight measure 4. So now this is a 3/4 time signature, right? So what does that mean? How many beats are in a bar now? 3, right? Top number right there. So now look, 1, 2, 3, and now here comes the next bar, number 5, right? So if we go to measure 5, again, we're looking at visual representations of beats here, right? So again, beat number 1 or downbeat, and then 2, 3, and then here comes measure 6, measure 7, measure 8, and so on. Let's do one more time signature, just for the top number. Okay, so we're gonna click on this. Let's go to 2/4, right? Watch what's gonna happen to the cycle bar. Let's go there together. Follow along. And again, it's gonna ask you to change time signature. Boom. So there we go. Now we're changing the time signature again. Now if we go to measure 4 again, look at the count now. Now it's downbeat, beat number 2, and now the next measure, the next bar. Same thing, 6, same thing, 7, same thing, 8. So hopefully that makes some sense. So let's go back up to time signatures. Let's click on 4/4. 4/4 is gonna be, it's the typical time signature. So a large majority of the songs that you listen to are all in 4/4. And we're gonna go deeper into time signatures and more complicated time signatures later on. Right now we're just getting the basics, right? So yeah, there we go. We have a 4/4 count. Now look, I want you to look at this. I'm gonna zoom in a little bit on measure 2. Now earlier we were doing it this way, right? And you could see that there are 4 grid lines for the one measure, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4. But now look what happens if I zoom in. Now all of a sudden there's a lot more lines on the ruler up here and on the grid. Here's how you can still visually tell the difference, right? So again, downbeat would be 2, and then the taller lines are gonna be the beats, the taller lines. So again, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then the next measure. If I went back to a 3/4, right? Look at the 3/4. So here's measure 3. And then look, again, the tall lines represent the beats. Look, 1, 2, 3. Logic is made up, well, all DAWs are made up of beats, bars, divisions, and ticks. We're gonna go into that later on because people always ask, well, what are the smaller lines, right? So we'll get into this a little deeper, but again, we're just getting the basics. But look at that. Now the lines get smaller here too. And these are basically beats, bars, divisions, and ticks. All right, we'll talk about that later. But anyway, guys, that's the top number. Now let's talk about the second number, which is the note value. This is a little tricky, especially if you're not a musician. It's a little tricky if you have never read a music note, but we're gonna connect the dots, okay? And I don't wanna go too deep into this because there's music theory involved. So I'm gonna touch on this lightly. Let me give you an example, or let me show you a breakdown of what note values look like. All right, guys, now listen, before we move on, I know that some of you are in band. I know that some of you guys are musicians and you already understand how note values work, but everybody in the room is not a musician. So I need you to be a little patient. Watch the rest of the tutorial, whether you are a musician or not. And if you do understand note values, that's great. You can help me teach everyone in the room. You can help your neighbor, you can help your classmates. And guess what? Listen, you helping your classmates is great because you may be able to teach this better than I do. Who knows? I'm man enough to admit that, all right? So anyway, let's get back to it. Okay, so hopefully you read through those. Hopefully you got those in your notes. Now, this is something that's kind of difficult to explain. At least in my mind, it's difficult to explain if I'm not explaining it in a hands-on type of situation. So when we start making the first beat, when we get to the first beat project, I'm going to break note values down a little bit more. Find out who the musicians are in the room, talk to them because they'll be able to help you and they'll be able to help you understand this a little bit more. All right. Anyway, guys, hopefully that made some sense. And in the next tutorial, we're going to talk about counting measures, and it's going to be a beautiful thing. And then we're going to move on to making beats. Thanks, guys.